Your great-grandparents relied on a backyard sunflower that could feed a family through drought, hardship, even total neglect, yet today almost no one remembers its name. This tough North American crop produced pounds of sweet, nutty tubers each year from a single planting, and it once meant survival for entire generations. Why did America abandon the plant that promised an endless harvest? The answer reveals what we lost and what is still hidden beneath our lawns. A single stalk of Jerusalem artichoke rises above the garden bed, taller than most backyard crops. At full height, it stands anywhere from 4 to 10 feet, often eye level with a grown adult, sometimes towering overhead. The stem is sturdy and rough, edged with broad, sandpapery leaves that alternate up its length. As summer deepens, clusters of yellow flowers unfurl at the very top. These blooms resemble small sunflowers, their petals golden and bright, but with a wild, untamed look. Each head turns to follow the arc of the sun from east to west, a trait inherited from its sunflower lineage. The motion is subtle, almost invisible hour by hour, but unmistakable when observed across a day. In a row, the plants form a living wall, their blossoms catching the light and swaying in the breeze. The effect is striking, an unexpected forest at the edge of a vegetable patch, far taller than potatoes or beans. Gardeners once measured the season by these sun-tracking flowers, marking the late summer when their yellow faces appeared. Despite their height, the stalks bend rather than break in strong wind, anchored by roots that reach deep into the soil. This visible part of the plant, stalk, leaf, and flower, gives no hint of the harvest hidden below. Yet for generations, this towering presence signaled abundance. In late summer, the Jerusalem artichoke stands as a quiet sentinel, promising more than just beauty. Its true value lies out of sight, waiting underground. Beneath the towering stalks, the real treasure lies hidden in the dirt. Dig just a few inches down and you will find a cluster of knobby tan tubers, Jerusalem artichokes known today as sunchokes. At first glance, they look nothing like the smooth, familiar potato. Each tuber is a tangle of curves and bumps, shaped more like ginger root than any supermarket staple. Snap one open, and the inside is crisp, white, and almost juicy. The skin is thin enough to eat, and the scent is earthy with a hint of sweetness. Raw, a slice of sunchoke crunches between your teeth, cool and refreshing. The flavor is both nutty and sweet, with a whisper of artichoke and a finish that is almost like a water chestnut. Roasted or boiled, the flesh softens and the sweetness deepens, lending itself to soups, gratins, or simply eaten with a sprinkle of salt. For generations, this taste meant security, a food that could be eaten raw in the field or transformed into a hot meal on a cold night. The tuber's odd shape is not just a quirk of nature. The Jerusalem artichoke came from a wild cross between the hairy sunflower and the saw-tooth sunflower, a hybrid that gave it both its hardiness and its unusual form. This tangled ancestry set it apart from the common sunflower and gave it a unique place among North American crops. Every bite carries the memory of this genetic mingling, a flavor and texture that no other root can quite match. Underground, the sunchoke was a promise. As long as there was a patch in the yard, there would always be something to eat. Long before the name Jerusalem artichoke ever appeared in seed catalogs, this plant was known and valued by the first peoples of North America. Across the eastern woodlands and prairies, indigenous communities recognized the sunchoke as a dependable food, a living reserve that could be gathered when other crops failed or the hunt came up short. The Cree and Huron called it askipaw or skibwan, which means raw thing, a nod to the way tubers could be eaten straight from the ground. Early European explorers found these gardens thriving where corn, beans, and squash grew together, a polycrop system refined over centuries. In July of 1605, Samuel de Champlain stepped ashore at Cape Cod and found the eastern Abenaki tending plots that included Jerusalem artichoke among their staple crops. Champlain wrote of roots with a flavor like artichokes, noting their place alongside tobacco and other foods, all carefully managed in mounded garden beds. The plant's reach stretched far beyond the coast. On the Great Plains, native farmers grew sunchokes in scattered patches, trading tubers along river routes and expanding its range westward. The tubers were more than just a meal. They were a form of security, stashed for lean times, dried for travel, or ground into flour for stews. Hunters carried them in pouches, and families relied on them through the winter months, drawing on a knowledge passed down through generations. European settlers marveled at the abundance and resilience of these gardens, but often misunderstood the skill it took to maintain them. Indigenous growers managed soil, rotated crops, and selected the hardiest plants for replanting. The sunchoke's wild vigor was shaped by careful stewardship, not chance. In many tribal languages, the names for the plant reflect its role as a gift from the earth, never just a weed, but a companion in survival. The story of the Jerusalem artichoke begins here. In the hands of those who first cultivated it, long before it found its way to foreign shores or suburban gardens. This is where the plant's promise was first realized, and where its legacy still deserves recognition. In the hardest years of the Great Depression, when jobs vanished and money meant little, a patch of Jerusalem artichokes in the backyard could mean the difference between hunger and a meal. Families who kept even a small corner of their yard for these plants found a quiet kind of security. The tubers did not need tending, fertilizer, or irrigation, just a bit of earth and patience. As neighbors lined up at soup kitchens or stretched rations, those who remembered to dig for sunchokes had something fresh and filling on their plates. Elders who grew up in the 1930s recall their parents sending them out with a spade after the first frost, when the ground softened just enough to pry up a cluster of tubers. One plant could yield as much as 5 pounds, enough for several meals, and new shoots would sprout the next spring from any piece left behind. The crop was nearly impossible to kill. Even in the dust-choked fields of Oklahoma or the rocky soils of Appalachia, sunchokes survived when potatoes withered. Drought, frost, neglect, none of it seemed to matter. The plants returned every year, unasked and undemanding. In some towns, sunchokes grew wild along fence lines and ditches, spreading wherever a tuber had been dropped. Children learned to recognize the tall, sunflower-like stalks and the promise they held below. For many, the first taste was raw, crisp, cold, and slightly sweet, straight from the earth. Others boiled the tubers with a pinch of salt or sliced them into stews to stretch whatever meat or beans could be found. There was no need to replant each season. As long as a few tubers stayed in the ground, the patch would return, year after year, feeding the same family through hard winters and lean springs. The resilience of Jerusalem artichoke made it more than a crop. It was a lifeline. Grandparents still speak of the relief they felt, knowing that no matter how empty the pantry or how uncertain the paycheck, there was always something growing quietly out back. The memory of those hidden harvests lingers, woven into stories of survival and the quiet pride of getting by when there was nothing left to spend. After World War II, the way Americans got their food changed almost overnight. Supermarkets began popping up in every town, promising shoppers a steady supply of spotless, uniform produce year-round. Behind the scenes, the supply chain was designed for crops that could handle long journeys and months in storage. Potatoes, with their smooth skins and sturdy shapes, fit perfectly into this new system. They stacked neatly in crates, survived long hauls in refrigerated trucks, and could sit on shelves for weeks without shriveling. Jerusalem artichokes were a different story. Their knobby, uneven tubers bruised easily and dried out fast, making them a headache for shippers and store managers alike. A crate of sunchokes dug from the earth looked wild and unfamiliar next to the clean lines of a russet potato. Wholesale buyers favored crops that offered predictability, measured yields, minimal waste, and a look that matched consumer expectations. Sunchokes did not fit the bill. Their irregular shape made them hard to clean and package. Their thin skins meant they spoiled quickly, especially under bright store lights or in dry storerooms. Potatoes could be harvested by machine, washed by the ton, and shipped across the country without much loss. Sunchokes required gentle handling and quick turnover, two things the new food economy had little patience for. As the supermarket model took hold, decisions about which crops to grow and sell were made less on flavor or resilience, and more on logistics and efficiency. The Jerusalem artichoke, once a symbol of abundance in backyard gardens, became a casualty of an industry that valued uniformity and shelf life above all else. In the years after World War II, a new American dream took root, not in backyard gardens, but in endless rows of green lawns stretching across the suburbs. Freshly built neighborhoods promised space, order, and a sense of arrival. Developers carved up farmland into tidy plots, each with a manicured yard out front and, more often than not, a patch of grass in back where vegetable beds once stood. Victory gardens, so common during the war, faded as families traded spades for lawnmowers. The sound of a mower became the soundtrack of Saturday mornings, and a perfect weed-free lawn was a badge of belonging in the new middle class. This shift wasn't just about aesthetics. Local ordinances and neighborhood associations began to enforce lawn standards, sometimes banning vegetable gardens in front yards or restricting what could be grown behind the house. Seed catalogs started to feature grass varieties and chemical fertilizers instead of heirloom vegetables. The backyard, once a place of quiet resilience, became a showcase for uniformity. As suburban life spread, the old knowledge, the rhythm of planting, harvesting, and replanting was quietly lost. Grandparents who had dug sunchokes from the earth watched as their children paved over the garden for patios and swing sets. With every new lawn, another piece of the edible landscape disappeared. The Jerusalem artichoke, once a fixture behind sheds and along fences, was crowded out by sod and forgotten by a generation raised on supermarket produce. The break wasn't just physical, it was cultural. Recipes vanished from family tables, and the stories that once accompanied a fall harvest faded into memory. The old crop waited underground, its roots tangled beneath the grass as the world above moved on. At the edge of the market stall, a chalkboard reads Sunchoke, $6 a pound. The old name is nowhere in sight. In the last decade, Jerusalem artichoke has quietly slipped back into public view, not as a forgotten relic, but as a specialty crop with a new identity. Vendors at farmers markets now call it sunchoke, a word that sidesteps confusion and hints at sunshine and freshness. The tubers, once dismissed as too odd-looking for the produce aisle, are now stacked in baskets, their knobby shapes celebrated instead of hidden. Each one fetches a price that would have stunned Depression-era gardeners, $4, $6, even $8 a pound depending on the season and the city. Chefs have taken notice. In restaurant kitchens from San Francisco to New York, sunchoke has become a quiet favorite. Some roast the tubers whole, letting the skin blister and the flesh turn sweet. Others shave them raw into salads or simmer them into velvety soups. For many chefs, the appeal is more than flavor. It is the story, the sense of rediscovering an ingredient that once fed families through hard times. One vendor recalls a local chef buying 10 pounds at a time, eager to feature sunchoke on the menu as both a novelty and a nod to heritage. The demand is steady, and for small growers, the economics make sense. Where once the crop was a backyard afterthought, it is now a market star, prized for its taste, its history, and its ability to thrive where other roots will not. The sunchoke's new chapter is being written on handwritten price tags and in the kitchens of those who see value in what others forgot. Nutritionists point to sunchoke's underground secret, inulin, a type of fiber that slips through the digestive tract without raising blood sugar. Unlike starch-heavy potatoes, sunchokes store their energy in this prebiotic compound. For people managing diabetes, that difference matters. Slices of raw sunchoke deliver a crisp, sweet crunch, but the real benefit comes later, feeding the gut's good bacteria instead of spiking glucose. Registered dietitian Dr. Melissa Hart explains that inulin is a prebiotic. It helps nourish your gut microbiome and does not cause the blood sugar swings you would see with other root vegetables. Chefs have taken note too. At a small bistro in Brooklyn, roasted sunchokes arrive at the table. Caramelized and golden, served with a dollop of yogurt and a drizzle of honey. Across town, a chef shaves them paper-thin into salads for a nutty, refreshing bite. The tuber's versatility, raw, roasted, or pureed, has made it a quiet favorite in kitchens that prize both flavor and nutrition. For home cooks, it is a way to add something unexpected to the plate. A root that brings both history and health to the table. What was once a survival food now draws praise for what it leaves behind. Steady energy, a happy gut, and a taste that lingers long after the meal ends. A single tuber, rough and unassuming, is all it takes to start. Plant it whole, about 4 inches deep, in any patch of ground that gets sun for at least part of the day. Fall or early spring is the best time, just as the soil softens or before it freezes for winter. There's no need to fuss over fertilizer or perfect conditions. Sunchokes thrive in almost any soil, from heavy clay to loose sand, and don't mind if you forget about them for weeks at a time. But there is a secret every experienced grower shares. Containment is the key. These plants spread with a stubborn determination. If you want to keep them in check, choose a raised bed, a large container, or a spot bordered by thick roots or stone. Otherwise, a single planting can turn into a thicket by the second season, with new shoots popping up far beyond where you started. Once planted, cover the tubers and walk away. Water if the season is dry, but most years, rain alone will be enough. By midsummer, thick stems will reach for the sky, topped with yellow blooms by late August. There is no need to dig or disturb them until after the first frost, when the tubers turn sweeter underground. To harvest, simply loosen the soil and pull up a cluster of fresh, crisp roots. Leave a few behind and the patch will return, year after year, demanding almost nothing in return. For those who want a crop that asks little and gives much, sunchoke is a quiet promise kept in the earth. In a world facing rising food insecurity and climate uncertainty, a single backyard plant still offers food with almost no effort. While sunchokes quietly reappear in farmers' markets, most lawns remain empty of sustenance. The knowledge isn't lost, it's waiting to be used again. Sometimes the next solution is the one we buried long ago. What would you grow if hunger knocked on your door? Let me know in the comments below.